Welcome to Wiki Weekends, where we wind up a wiki, we take a deep dive, and we keep swimming until we find something to talk about. I'm your host for this episode, Lucas Holland, and I am always joined by the lovely Karl Smallwood.
Greetings.
It's one of those days where I just had to do about 4 takes of the intro, so bear with us, because Karl and I are neither of us really, experts on this subject.
Yeah, which annoys fans. It's like, hey, the format of the show is, here's a thing we're interested in, let's read the wiki to learn more about it. If you know more than us, congratulations, you don't need the wiki. We do.
Yeah, the wiki is here to guide us along the way. And last time we talked about something that was related to Doctor Who, we got some, critical comments, I want to say.
Let's call them enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic comments about how Karl and I don't know much about Doctor Who, and that's true. We literally don't, but I really enjoy it. I've watched a lot of the more modern Doctor Who from kind of the reboot when Christopher Eccleston came in, and I kind of watched until, partway through Peter Capaldi's run, so I've watched, a fair amount of Doctor Who and enjoyed it, but...
You haven't really, though, because there's, over half a century of Doctor Who stuff, most of which doesn't exist anymore, because the BBC deleted all the tapes.
Yeah, right, and, even, talking to someone in my chat on Twitch who'd been going back and watching all the old Doctor Who of there's just some chunks that are really either hard to find or don't exist anymore.
Straight up don't exist, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that weird thing of they didn't think this thing was worth preserving at the time, and now it's one of the most important parts of British culture. And
yeah, it's up there with Sherlock Holmes as one of the single most important characters in British canon. And I say that as in terms of our media. It's there's Robin Hood, there's James Bond, there's Doctor Who.
I mean, yeah, I would probably say in my eye that Doctor Who, even though it's not got massive blockbuster Hollywood movies, I'd say it's as important as James Bond is.
Yeah, at least in terms of the cultural impact the character has had.
Mm-hmm. While it is something that we should talk about and respect, I also want to point out a lot of it was literally not worth saving and was just dumb, low-budget, goofy sci-fi British TV.
Also, as well, there's this weird adherence people have to, the canon of Doctor Who, when they literally just... Okay, so how many times can the Doctor regenerate? 12? That sounds like we probably not be making them that long, right? Oh shit, it's 50 years later. Bullshitting. The canon can change... because the creators want to keep making the thing.
Sometimes it revels in its bullshit, and other times it just kind of has to be oh look, just, bear with us on this one. And
I like that though, right?
Yeah,
so I'm a big fan of stuff like that. Where it's I think of the Teen Titans show, where they literally had a separate intro for if the episode was going to be goofy. The Japanese version was if it was going to be goofy. The English lyrics were if it was going to be serious.
Oh, okay. I like the fact that it flits between, and I really get annoyed when, maybe some of the more modern fans, especially, I would guess, because it's mostly taken itself very seriously over the past couple of decades, or 15 years, I guess, I think it is. And it's yeah, I was I also get it. We set off on quite a serious tone and stuck with that for the most part, but we spoke about it last time we talked about Doctor Who, of just let the dumb stuff in as well, though.
Well, that's what makes the show so charming. It's I get that it's interesting to have this core canon of these heady sci-fi concepts, but some of the best episodes, because I'm only a casual fan, are just where it's just, let's let these esteemed British actors just fuck around. Let's bring in Peter Kay and make him the Absorbal off.
Dissolve into me.
Yeah, and when we say let the actors fuck around, we don't mean, the awful things that apparently John Barrowman did on set. We mean let them have fun. Let them not be a massive asshole.
When people think of their favourite version of the Doctor, it's the moments that they single out as being their favourite moments aren't the big speeches a lot of the time. It's usually those silly character moments, a lot of people like Matt Smith's Doctor, where he's just wearing the fez.
Now I don't have the Sonic, I just gave it to Rory 2,000 years ago. And when you're done, leave my screwdriver in a top pocket.
They're like David Tennant, just being charming and smug.
Verily, forsooth, egads.
No, don't do that. Don't.
Or Christopher Eccleston, where he has that great line in the Christmas episode of, just this once, Everyone gets a happy ending.
Yeah.
All right, remember, folks, build the NHS and beat the Germans.
Just this once. Everybody lives.
That's quite a depressing sentiment nowadays, isn't it? Of like,
It is, yeah.
the most important thing is the NHS. It's like not in modern Britain, goddamn.
Well, people remember those moments.
I think a lot of people do, yeah, and I'm sure there's also people that their favourite moment is one of the many moments where the Doctor's like, just look up who I am and see that I shouldn't be fucked around with. But for me personally, like, I like those moments, but I think some of the best moments are where it's just like insular, like silly little things. And
Standalone episodes, yeah. Like, it is a franchise that lends itself very well by both just the virtue of its longevity and the fact that the character is literally replaceable for telling one-off sci-fi stories.
you talk about how like long spanning this thing is, but some of the most incredible episodes are the standalone ones, like for example the episode, I believe it's called Blink, where they introduced
Weeping Angels.
The Weeping Angels, yeah. That was just a one-off episode that was kind of meant to go nowhere, and it was just a monster of the week.
Yep.
And people really latched onto that one, so it became more than that.
Like Doctor Who, I see it as being similar to like Star Trek, especially like the longevity, like back in the 60s and stuff. Of just okay, there is this overarching canon, but the thing people remember fondly about the show is not that story. It's watching the characters go to a new planet and go on an adventure.
If anything, I think most fans, maybe not all, but most fans probably got really exhausted when they brought back the Last Dalek, the new Last Dalek, and introduced a new one, and like Davros came back, and then it's another Last Dalek ever. There was actually another 50 Daleks over here that we didn't know about, and it's like, the Daleks are really cool, but you need to stop telling everyone that the Last Dalek has died and then bringing them back next season.
I've come to help. I'm the Doctor. Impossible.
Again, that just shows that the canon doesn't really matter. What matters is telling a fun story. Mm-hmm. And I think like Doctor Who is like a great vehicle for just, let's just bring in an actor and make him a monster this week. Like I said, they're bringing in Peter Kay. Mm-hmm. Fuck it. Put Peter Kay in stupid makeup and make him run around screaming, "I'm the Absorbal off." Same with like, the actors who play the Doctor, just give them a lot of freedom to just exude their own personality and make the role their own.
Funny.
Am I? Good. Funny's good.
I think like a good example of that is The Master, where, obviously they are the polar opposites of the Doctor, but they're also a Time Lord, and you constantly just recast that role for a new villain every time they pop up, and each one of those actors gets to play the Master in a completely different way.
Let the work of government begin. Oh, go on, crack a smile. It's funny, isn't it?
And make the role their own, yes. And like even the acts, like every Doctor shares some traits. There are some traits the Doctor shares, but essentially each one is a new character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just gives actors a just fantastic opportunity to make it their own, put their own stamp on it.
And I think it's kind of really fun where I remember in the Peter Capaldi episode where the first time he was Peter Capaldi, like over the episode he's trying to like figure out who he is now. And he's like, oh, okay, like I'm Scottish now, and like, oh, okay, cool, I'm like an older guy, I'm a bit grumpier, I'm a bit more serious. Like, you see him going through those moments in real time, and I think that's always really fun.
Yeah, it's basically like body swap comedy almost, isn't it? Of okay, so I guess this is the body that I have now,
and I guess this is the personality I have now as well.
Yeah, because this body has like just different experiences. But there's always like a little element of like the Doctor's very playful. I've always like as a character. Very playful. Sometimes that comes across as more wry and sarcastic as the Peter Capaldi version. Sometimes more childlike and innocent as like the Matt Smith version. Mm-hmm. There's always like a playfulness to the Doctor. That's like one of the key traits.
I've not actually watched the most recent Doctor Who's where either Jodie Whittaker or Ncuti Gatwa have come in, but like I'm also sure that those elements are in play there as well.
Well, that's the thing I've loved about. Again, I've only seen just posters of the latest Doctor Who, and the actor, name again, Ncuti Gatwa?
Ncuti Gatwa, I believe.
Ncuti Gatwa, my apologies there. Of that guy is just owning that role. Like every
completely.
poster I see for an episode of Doctor Who, because it's this huge British institution, so it's always getting advertised everywhere. Guy looks like it's killing it. Of just, that is so Doctor Who. Like that picture they did where it was like wearing the kilt, and everyone's giving a shit. Like, the Doctor would never wear a dress. It's like half the Doctors we've had have been fucking Scottish. Are you really going to call having a kilt a dress?
Yeah,
Try saying that to David Tennant.
Look at some of the more classic Doctor Who's and how flamboyant their outfits were.
Yeah, like, just think about what Tom Baker, his giant fucking scarf. His giant mile-long scarf and, like, his big floppy hat. Yeah, Doctor Who's always been a very camp character. Which is what
Totally,
it adds to the charm. It's why I don't think Doctor Who they should never make a Doctor Who movie. Doctor Who, and I don't like that the later seasons get better budgets. Nah, man. Like, they made a bin with a whisk strapped to it, one of the most terrifying sci-fi monsters ever in the Dalek. The more the budget they get, the less creativity I feel that they have to employ to make just bullshit an explanation.
And obviously when Karl says, hope they don't get a movie, there was a movie, but it was like a TV movie. It wasn't a big, massive, blockbuster, $200 million budget movie.
I never want to see like a Doctor Who get like a James Bond movie. It's like, no, if you're going to do that, if you're going to give him a movie budget, I want to make just 3 giant episodes.
We're not here to talk about the villains this time, Karl. We're here to talk about something that has definitely looked very different depending on how much budget they have. At the same time, look the exact same almost the entire time because it's the TARDIS.
I like the TARDIS because the original, you can correct me wrong, you've obviously got the wiki to go through it, but yeah, they said, the TARDIS, it's inconspicuous and it allows the Doctor to travel throughout the cosmos without anyone really noticing them. Because when is a phone box not gonna... Because obviously all the earliest episodes were filmed in Britain.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, phone box was not out of place in any British town.
But like...
Also, it's a police box.
It was a police box, yeah.
Which is why I'm confused, because police boxes aren't a thing anymore.
I think they still technically exist in like a couple of places in Britain, but like... Generally speaking, widespread, they are not a thing that exist. They are not a thing that have really existed during Karl and my entire lifetime.
And the only way they do exist is usually just they're maintained for nostalgia, like phone boxes, those big red phone boxes that people know about Britain. Whenever I'm walking around Sheffield, I'll see occasionally tourists taking pictures with them because they see it's this icon of British culture. Most of them don't work anymore. They put like defibrillators in them and stuff, don't they?
Yeah, like most of them are just out of use and used for public toilets at this point. Like,
yeah,
it's a bit grim in terms of the phone box situation nowadays. But
yeah, so I do apologize. I know it's not a phone box; it's a police box. But in my head, I was like, yeah, it's a phone box, right? Because I don't know what a police box is. I've never seen one.
I've never seen one outside of Doctor Who, ever in my entire life. And yes, I know people commented last time that there are still a couple around, but they're not like this common thing where when Doctor Who was invented, it was a legitimate disguise because a police box was a normal thing to see.
It's also something that the average person in Britain at the time would not go over and dick around with because the police officer might be inside.
That's the weird thing is, like, I say that it hasn't changed, is ostensibly on the outside, it's always been just a blue police box, like, apart from, you know, maybe when they very first introduced it, but for the most part, it's always been the same blue police box, but then the interior changes with every Doctor, if not more frequently than that.
It's called the TAR.D.I.S. It can travel anywhere in time and space. And it's mine.
It's a storytelling device, and it will serve whatever function the plot demands of it. It's like the sonic screwdriver, isn't it? What does the sonic screwdriver do? Whatever the episode needs it to do.
Yeah, sometimes it can only unlock some certain types of doors, and then other times it can do things that like bend time and space. Yeah,
and it's like, why don't you just do that thing you did in like 3 seasons ago, where you like blew a hole in like a black hole with it? because that was a different writer.
Mm-hmm.
The screwdriver will do what it needs to do in this episode and nothing more.
It's the ultimate Deus Ex Machina. It does whatever it needs to do.
It's a Deus Ex Machina being wielded by a bigger Deus Ex Machina in the Doctor.
Yeah, and like that's great. Like that's fine because the universe essentially sets up the sonic screwdriver in that way, and you just have that suspension of disbelief.
That more than anything sums up why you shouldn't think too much about it, because even the people writing the stories don't really care that much about the canon.
Mm-hmm.
They won't acknowledge like there's some core things they want, like Daleks are going to always be a thing. But even like the most critical aspects of the Doctor, like the limited number of regenerations, they want that back.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just want to keep making Doctor Who episodes.
And speaking of like not sticking to the same continuity,
yes,
a TARDIS, which is spelt all in caps here, like T.A.R.D.I.S. all in caps, sometimes styled TARDIS lowercase, sometimes styled TARDIS lowercase and italics, and also variably called a TT capsule. A TT capsule, a time ship, or a TARDIS unit that was the primary space-time vehicle used by the Time Lords of Gallifrey, and all of a sudden, just second one on this wiki is just like...
They don't even know how to spell it.
We don't really know.
There's not even a definitive way to spell it. Do you know why? It doesn't matter. It is a storytelling device to facilitate telling an interesting sci-fi story to entertain people for half an hour.
Exactly.
And it's fine that the series can be that. And I know it means a lot more to a lot of people, but it can be both.
Yeah.
It's a very malleable franchise.
For certain, yeah. It's gone through a lot in the past 60 plus years. It allows them to travel throughout the universe beyond their temporal capabilities. TARDISes were known for their dimensional transcendentalism. Yep, I knew that word.
Bullshit sci-fi term.
Which is being bigger on the inside than on the outside.
And I'm a big fan of that concept because now TARDIS has become just like a synonym for things that are bigger on the inside than the outside. Mm-hmm. Do you know what other, British institution gets frequently referred to as the TARDIS?
No.
Number 10 Downing Street.
Oh.
So if you put like a picture in or a clip of like number 10 Downing Street, it does look like a house, right?
Yeah.
And Americans watching, like that's where our Prime Minister lives. Like you look at the White House, this giant fuck off mansion. Our Prime Minister lives in like, a 2-up, 2-down terraced house. Inside, it is the same size as like the White House because that entire row of buildings is number 10.
Oh.
So they say that people come in, like dignitaries and stuff, and look at it, and it looks quite unassuming for the residence of a head of state. You walk in and say it's ginormous. So they call it the TARDIS.
Because obviously the fronts of the other houses are still there.
Yep.
But I didn't realise that they expanded it into those other houses around it.
Yep, and it's colloquially known just as the TARDIS.
Oh, I never knew that, yeah. I kind of, I guess, now feel really foolish for assuming that the Prime Minister would live in just a terraced house.
Do you think the Prime Minister's got neighbours? Can you imagine like knocking on his door to turn his music down or whatever?
I just kind of assumed like maybe the Shadow Cabinet lived next door or something.
That'd be great, that, wouldn't it? Of like, ordering a pizza. Apparently you can order pizza to it, but you've got to order it from like special like takeaways. Maybe one day we'll do an episode on number 10 Downing Street. It has an interesting history.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden lore that I'm clearly not aware of because I just don't like to pay attention to politicians and think they're all scum. So
it just looks so funny. Like you just think like it looks so unassuming, and that's where like the leader of our country lives. Especially when it's like down the road from Buckingham Palace. It's like wait, so
the least assuming.
The person who actually runs the country lives in a fucking terraced house, and the ceremonial figurehead lives in a literal palace.
I guess that's the difference between being like an owner and a tenant, right?
It is, yeah.
It's like, you're just renting out the country for a few years. I fucking own this bitch. And it also mentions here that the TARDIS has a possession of a form of consciousness, which I know does come up every now and then, of like, there's a moment, I think it might be in the Matt Smith Doctor Who, where they get personified and become an actual woman for a bit.
They just talk to a TARDIS.
She just basically gives the Doctor shit for treating her so poorly over the years, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, what do you call me? We travel. I go
The T.A.R.D.I.S.
Time and relative dimension in space. Yes, that's it. Names are funny. It's me.
That makes sense as well, because it's a ship. Like, it's a ship that just goes through space, a spaceship, essentially. And ships were generally given female names. So to be personified as a woman makes sense.
It's one of those things of, like, every boat is a woman, for example. Like, that's often how people see it, is, like, vehicles are always women. And I don't know where that comes from, but that's just a thing that is just, like, you know, part of culture. It does say here, these vessels could also be called greater time elementals, and the TARDIS was once referred to as time and relative dimensions in spacecraft.
Yeah.
Which the TARDIS stands for time and relative dimensions in space, but, like, it says once referred to as, which either means it's only been referred to that as it once, or it's not referred to it as that anymore.
Again, I wouldn't know, because my familiarity with the series is as a casual fan who's aware of its reputation as a British institution. I'm not too deep in on the lore.
And that's the weird thing, right? Is, like, you know, people in the comments maybe don't come at us for missing out certain elements. Maybe come in and help us, like, as a community, learn more and let us know what is the case in terms of, like, is it not referred to as time and relative dimension in space anymore?
There's also, as well, you know, worth acknowledging that, you know, you could be a casual fan of something. You don't need to know everything about a franchise to be considered to be a fan of it. Like you said, I'm a fan of Doctor Who as a British institution. It's one of our few cultural exports that I think has made it outside of the boundaries of the UK. Like, think about how many iconic things that you consider to be, like, quintessentially British, that if we mention them, Americans have no fucking clue. Like Only Fools and Horses, or Red Dwarf, or EastEnders, or Coronation Street. Very few, like, British cultural institutions make it outside the confines of our country, and Doctor Who is one of them.
Streaming services have really helped popularise British things, essentially, especially in America. I see a lot of American people now catching up with, like, British pop culture from 20, 30 years back. Where
Well, that's what happened. Yeah, you had the Super Wholock fandom on Tumblr, which was like Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock.
Right, yeah.
And have you ever heard the term they use for, like, people who are obsessed with, like, these British shows?
Oh, it's Tea-aboo, right?
Tea-aboo, yeah. People who, like, just watch, like, Sherlock and Doctor Who. So, I love British things. Like, when you meet someone, they go, "Oh, you're British. Bottle of water."
I'm a weeb. I'm a weeaboo, which is, like, somebody who probably is over enthusiastic about, like, Japanese culture and anime and stuff.
Generally in a very surface, like, level way as well, yes.
Yes, yeah. And I admit, you know, I'm probably a weeb, but I love the fact that, like, instead of a weeaboo, people who are obsessed with British culture and, you know, probably wrongfully get associated with tea, because that's not a British thing, that we just stole that shit. But,
what's more British than stealing something and saying it's ours? There's nothing more British than that, Lucas.
That's our culture, stealing other culture.
He's taking something that's, like, you know, created by another culture and saying that's ours now.
That is ours.
That's the most British shit ever.
Yeah, just, like, the idea of taking, like, the weeaboo and making it tea-aboo. Yeah, I cracked up when I first heard about that.
It's so good as well. And I think, you know, I think other shows since then, like The Crown, that got really popular. So it was on, like, Netflix. Suits. No, it's not Suits, The Bodyguard, I think it is. What's it called now?
Okay.
Line of Duty is another one. Was that one with Richard Madden in? I think it's called, like, The Bodyguard or something like that. But, you know, speaking of Scottish actors, this is a fun bonus fact you can put in. So the show he was in, it's simply called Bodyguard. Because he's a bodyguard and he's protecting, like, the Prime Minister or something. The way he says "ma'am," so, like, you'd refer to, like, you know, sort of higher standing, like, be respectful, "ma'am." He pronounced it like "mom," so Americans thought he was saying "mom."
Yeah, like "mum."
Yeah, but he says it with a Scottish accent, so he says "mom," and Americans thought that the person he's protecting, his principal, is his mom, and then the two characters have a sex scene, and Americans are like, "Wow, this British show goes off the fucking rails." Just and people were, like, on Twitter, like, "I can't believe he's sleeping with his mum," because they didn't understand Scottish accents.
And they didn't understand that, like, the mom of it all instead of mum. Yeah.
Because that's not really a thing over in America. I think people can say "ma'am," but, like, the way we pronounce it is a lot different to our American, and especially a Scottish actor. So they thought he was just fucking his mum.
Have a good evening, Mum. Mum, you have to tuck under your jacket, Mum. Pardon me, Mum. Mum. No, Mum. Sorry, Mum.
That's some Game of Thrones shit, and that's another thing that was like, I guess, like, it was filmed in Britain with a lot of British actors.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily like a British completely made thing, but it is very fun seeing, especially like the shows that got made in America, like, for example, The Office, Shameless, The IT Crowd. People now in America getting to see the actual British versions where it originated from. And it's really interesting to see, like, those comparisons being made of, wait, you mean The Office wasn't, like, actually an uplifting show? It's like, no, it was just horrendous, and they leaned into how horrendously, like, cringy and just depressing that show was. Like, that was the point of that show.
Yeah, it's like British humour tends to be a lot more understated, a lot more sarcastic, a lot more, and dour endings, bummer endings are more common.
It's why I generally enjoy watching American TV a lot of the time more than British, especially when it comes to, like, British, sitcoms and stuff, where most of the time the point is to kind of at least end on the same note or on a down note. I do kind of like watching something where it is like The Office or Parks and Rec, where the last episode is just, hey, we're going to give everyone a nice happy ending.
Give everyone a night. That's not very British though, is it?
It's not, but...
Never forget,
I don't
Lucas.
know, it's just the world is in a dark place. I like watching happy things, Carl.
One of the single greatest reviewed episodes of a British sitcom, Blackadder, it ends with all the main characters dying in World War One.
Yeah.
The literal last episodes, they all die in World War One. And it's a British comedy set in World War One. A comedy set in the trenches of World War One.
Yeah, in the trenches specifically as well. Of like the most like awful and depressing part of the Great War. Like,
yep. And the thing is, though, I don't think you can make an American comedy about that. I don't think, or at least, when I think of an American comedy, I don't think the style of a generic American comedy would work in a setting like that.
Going back to Doctor Who,
yes.
I think it would be really hard to make Doctor Who work in an American way, and makes me think about the way they portray it in Community, where I believe it's like Inspector Spacetime is a gag in Community that's like a running show where like one of the characters, Abed, discovers and becomes obsessed with it, and it is kind of making fun of how the old school Doctor Who was super low budget and campy and stuff.
Inspector, look out! Blog-ons!
Eradicate.
This is the best show I've ever seen in my entire life.
They do a thing where in one episode they bring a couple of the characters in to focus test it, and they focus test it into oblivion, where it's like, I've got to have a tennis outfit wearing blonde sexy companion, and I can't travel through time and space. I can travel through time or space, because doing both at the same time would be really confusing.
Too confusing for a general audience.
And it's like they nail that joke of just what would probably happen if it got into like American hands.
I get to visit places like this because I can travel through time and space, but not both at once. Do you know why that is, Ensign?
Because, Inspector Spacetime, our minds would be blown with space-time confusion.
Well, I think that's worth pointing out as well. Like, just British sitcoms, people in them tend to just look like people. Like we mentioned earlier, like Blackadder. The characters in that just look like people. Whereas you watch, like, American sitcoms, that's something, I guess, Lampshade in one of your favourite sitcoms, Always Sunny. Where just generally it's like a bunch of supermodel attractive people. And even when it wouldn't make sense for it to be that, like in Big Bang Theory, where everyone on that show is like supermodel attractive, including the nerds who are supposed to not be able to get dates.
All of those sitcoms, they generally just get better looking over time because they become richer and richer and get stylists and better like makeup artists and stuff like that.
But compare that to something like the IT Crowd, where you've got like just Roy from the IT Crowd. He just looks like a guy.
Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again? Okay, well, the button on the side, is it glowing? Yeah, you need to turn it on.
Yeah.
Because he's playing an IT guy. What does he wear? Jeans and a t-shirt, and he's like mostly unkempt.
Maybe the best example of just the Americanization is the fact that that guy becomes Joel McHale in the American version.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Okay, well, the button on the side, is it glowing? Yeah, we're going to need to turn it on.
Obviously, a person that we should shout out from The Office is Matt Berry, who nowadays has like a massive cult following, but when you watch him on the IT Crowd, it's like no one really knew about Matt Berry back then, but just like, who is this guy stealing every fucking scene he's in?
The thing is, though, imagine the American version, what they do with like Matt Berry's character. Because Matt Berry, the reason his character works, to explain, we talk about IT Crowd now, is that it's a relatively realistic world that they build, and then there's a couple of characters who are just a bit weird, like Denham, like the Chris Morris character. Where like the first episode of like where he's talking about you need to work as a team. If you don't work as a team, then you're going to be fired. It's like, wait, I've got a phone call, Jen. Who's that? Oh, you need to work on this as a team. If you don't work as a team, you're all fired. You know what? You are fired.
Everyone on floor 4 is fired. Escort them from the premises and do it as a team. Remember, you're a team, and if you can't act as a team, you're fired too. Dawn, get on to recruitment. Get them to look for a security team that can work as a team. They may have to escort the current security team from the building for not acting like a team.
And seeing like regular people, quote unquote, just interact with someone that ridiculous is where the comedy comes from.
Yeah, same with like the episode where they introduced Noel Fielding's character in like the server room in the back.
Yeah, he's just a goblin.
Yeah.
Just a goblin man. But then they introduced the new character, Denham's son, Matt Berry. And again, a very realistic world. And then Matt Berry walks in and is like, Father!
Father!
But that wouldn't work if the rest of the show's world wasn't trying to be really realistic and grounded. Whereas I feel it'd be the temptation of an American version to make everyone that outlandish, which would kind of kill the point.
The weird thing about that show specifically is they might have just hired Matt Berry again because they just got Richard Ayoade to portray his role and just do the exact same lines again.
Which makes you... But they don't work because it's such a deadpan, dry delivery, which is, again, a very British thing.
It doesn't bounce off the other characters as well.
Because they're being exaggerated caricatures instead of realistic-looking and sounding people in an exaggerated, cartoonish scenario.
It makes me think, like, what the fuck would a American Doctor Who look like? And I literally think it would probably look like that joke from Community.
Yeah, probably. They'd want to make it too. They'd make everyone too attractive. You wouldn't have those interesting episodes where they just get in, okay, here's journeyman working British actor who's really good, but like, they're never going to be a leading man. Just put him in a side role and let him fucking kill it.
Very good example is probably Matt Smith, where Matt Smith is an attractive dude, but for whatever reason, probably his hair. Like, when he first got introduced as the Doctor, in comparison to David Tennant, everyone made fun of Matt Smith for being like goofy looking.
Too goofy, yeah.
Especially with like the bow tie and the fez and everything going on, like all that jazz. I don't think the fez was till like later in the season, but he's an intentionally bit more like goofy, silly side and a bit more like almost nerdy-ish in comparison to the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. I don't see that translating of like, I don't think they'd ever hire a person that would look goofy to somebody. Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant are like, and as I say, Matt Smith is like a good looking guy as well, but like I think both of them are pretty conventionally attractive, and then Matt Smith was a bit more like, as people said at the time, a bit more like goofy.
Not goofy looking, but goofy acting. And you also wouldn't get like an older person playing a main character like Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, exactly right. Of like Peter Capaldi, again, attractive guy. But he was a guy that's in, his 50s when he played the Doctor. We've spent about 10% of this episode talking about the Doctor or Doctor Who or the TARDIS.
Can we just talk about British sitcoms? Can we just do that?
That's the thing is, like, maybe the wiki for this one doesn't exist. Maybe it's not a Wiki Weekends anymore.
It disappeared. The TARDIS flew away.
I do want to talk about just, like, features for 1 second so that we can technically make this an episode that is Wiki Weekends.
Yeah, it flies about and shit, right? What else did it do? Has it got lasers out?
One of the key features of a TARDIS was that the interior existed in a different dimension from the exterior, which I wasn't aware is a different dimension technically. The main application of this concept was that it was bigger on the inside than the outside. Not all were, however, which it links to an audio story weapon of choice. So there's like one time where it was the same size on the inside.
Which just goes to show you the malleability of the universe. It will serve the function that the story requires it to.
The TARDIS is just what it needs to be at the time, just like almost everything in Doctor Who. Remember that time where they just went like, oh haha, the Daleks, they can't climb stairs, they can now.
Elevate!
Oh my god.
They can fly now.
It was always funny with Daleks though, because like I look like I could take a Dalek out, I'd push it over.
Mm-hmm.
But then they just in the story say no, they're completely and utterly bulletproof and immune to all damage. It's like I can see that plastic bin.
Yeah.
I see that whisk.
This feature required the use of dimensional dams, which upon the death of a TARDIS would leak through. One such effect of this was the TARDIS exterior growing to a gargantuan size. According to the 11th Doctor, this was a size leak, and I believe...
That is such a Doctor Who sentence.
Yes, yeah. It essentially became like a black hole or something, if memory serves right.
It's so dumb. And that's what makes it so fun, because anything can happen in one of these shows.
The 4th Doctor once tried to explain the phenomenon to Leela using two boxes, one small and the other. He placed the larger one further away, so it appeared as if it could fit within the small box. He then explained that if the big box could be accessed where it was from the small box would be bigger on the inside. However, Leela dismissed this as silly.
Is there anything like more hilarious in sci-fi than when they try and explain a very difficult, complex issue or problem or like concept? Well, they have to, and they have like in some cases an expert on the subject explaining it. Well, they have to explain it like a fucking idiot because the people watching at home haven't got degrees in like fucking space science.
And the people who came up with the concept also came up with something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So the classic one is the Interstellar one of like, how does a wormhole work? Where you get a piece of paper and put a pen through it. And it's like, why would the experts on wormholes explain it like this?
Yeah, and it really reminds me of like the bit in Father Ted where it's like, this cow is small, this cow is far away.
Small, far away. I forget.
Speaking of British sitcoms.
Speaking of just, you know, the awful bigot that is.
It's so funny as well because just like no one listens to him.
Oh,
what a
God.
fucking loser.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about him anymore. I guess we're done with trying to pretend that this was about the TARDIS.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like a Doctor Who episode where you walk inside thinking you're going to see more of the TARDIS and it's completely different inside. It's like, we tricked you.
We tricked you into thinking this had anything to do with Doctor Who.
No,
and
we
it kind of does a little bit, but yeah, I'm sorry. We got off the rails on this one.
It's like, as we talk about, it's an icon of British culture and like it's we do feel oddly proud and protective of it, and just, you know, we're bringing up the idea of like, what would Americans do with the show? Because they've discovered it, they enjoy it, and no doubt there have been conversations in the past. I have no doubt in my mind that an American company has tried to adapt it or do something with it.
I'm gonna struggle to come up with a title of this one of like the episode not really about the TARDIS.
It's more interesting to talk about just the idea of Doctor Who than it is the show than it's because I said so much of what is established in it can at any point be completely undone depending on what the episode needs in that moment.
Of course, there are great conversations that can be had, but Carl and I are both more casual fans, and it's just Doctor Who's coming out. I was excited, but clearly Carl and I's passion for just general British culture and TV took over.
It's one of our few cultural exports that's made it over to the States unmolested. And people watch it, they watch the British version, and it's, I said, the shitness of it is part of the charm. The inconsistency is part of the charm. The campness is part of the charm. I would hate to see it get like massive budgets and stuff like that.
People may interpret how Carl and I talk about Doctor Who as like making fun of it, but we think it's the whole charm of the show.
Also, we said, self-depreciating humour is a very British thing. Like, I don't know a single person who doesn't think the town they grew up in is a shithole. That doesn't mean they don't have, like, town pride. It's just that they have enough self-awareness to be like, it's a bit of shit though, innit? I'll never forget when a friend of mine visited from, I think it was America, and they asked, because I can't remember which friend it was who visited. I don't remember where they're from. It's like I've had multiple friends from multiple different regions of the world. And they said, can you take me out for, like, a traditional British dinner? So I took them to Greg's. Because I couldn't think of anything more traditionally British than Greg's. Let's go Greg's.
Dear, oh dear.
Well, like they said, I want to try some, like, some classic British food. So I took them to Greg's and got them a steak bake.
Half surprised that story didn't end with never spoons.
Not enough spoons, though. But, like, for Americans, that would be like if someone asking, take me to a restaurant, you take them to, like, Applebee's. Because, like, you could take it to, like, a fancy, like, steakhouse or something. Well, that's not the American experience. The American experience is getting fucking blind piss drunk at Applebee's at 3 PM. It's the same for real. Like, I could take you to a fancy restaurant, but if you want to experience, like, real Britain, let's go to Weatherspoons on a Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
You need to go at, like, 9 AM and see that there's people that have already been there for 6 hours.
Putting their shift in. As it say with, like, Doctor Who, of, like, yeah, if you are really a fan of Doctor Who, you want the Daleks, like, never take that whisk off. They've always got to have the whisk and the plunger.
They can't upgrade them past the point they've already been upgraded in terms of visual, like, fidelity and budget, because you just can't get rid of that stupid little, like, plunger on them.
You can't. The death ray, you mean?
The plunger wasn't the death ray, right?
I think one of them. That's the thing, though. It's the plunger or the whisk where they told people it was a death ray.
I can't get over the fact that I don't know what the plunger does.
Do you know what it fucking does? It scares the shit out of kids.
Because, like, there's a death ray on it,
I
which
think that might be the
people.
whisk. I think the whisk is like the death ray, and the plunger's like it sucks out brains.
But, like, yeah, what does the plunger do? Let us know in the comments what the plunger does on a Dalek, because I've never seen a Dalek get close enough to anything to, like, warrant the plunger usage.
And there's the thing, if they took away that, I wouldn't read it as a Dalek anymore.
Yeah.
Because that is such, like, an integral... As stupid as it is, an integral part of the design. It's part of the charm. It's like going to watch, like, a pantomime, where it is stupid. You know, you watch a pantomime, like... It's the suspension of disbelief, and it requires you to acknowledge, okay, we know it's stupid, but if you don't take part, you're going to ruin it for everybody else.
There's a good reason that pantomimes are something that haven't escaped British culture, Carl, is because they are a shocking shit show, and I abhor them. But
for everyone to have fun, you can't have a sourpuss like you in the audience not taking part.
That's why I don't go to them. I don't partake because I know I hate the experience. And if you like that shit, go ahead. Same with, like, musicals. It's like, I don't particularly like musicals. I don't partake in them. Go ahead and enjoy them. I'm sorry that I don't like them. Don't come at me.
But everyone needs to be on the same page. And, like, if you get someone who's... It's like the thing of, like, oh, it's a death ray. It's not a death ray. Because I can imagine watching, like, Doctor Who with someone. And it's like, oh, look, it's a Dalek. It's like, that looks stupid. And goes, oh, we're not going to... Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
So he's supposed to look stupid. That's the point.
You have to just, again, the suspension of disbelief of, like, no, that thing is terrifying.
Well, it reminds me, to end on, a good example of this, another great British sitcom, Bottom. The late, great Rick Mayall, the Christmas episode, where they're talking about, okay, we're making a Christmas dinner, it's got to have sprouts. But I don't like sprouts. Nobody likes sprouts. So why are we having sprouts? Because it's Christmas. So why has the Dalek got to have a plunger? The plunger's not scary, but it's got to have a plunger. Why? Because it's Doctor Who.
And thank you for spending 40 plus minutes talking all about Doctor Who with us.
Definitely only Doctor Who was discussed in this episode.
Definitely. Like, I'm sorry, Doctor Who fans clicking on this, because it didn't go well.
Well, it's like, if you're a fan of us, you've got to be a fan of these tangents. If you're not a fan of tangents, you're not a fan of us. Saying, like, if you're not a fan of, like, camp value and cheap, shitty, like, effects, you're not a fan of Doctor Who.
I think Doctor Who is 99% charm.
Yeah, it's carried entirely by the charisma of the actors and the just the concept being really strong. Everything else is superfluous.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I apologise again to anyone clicking on this thinking it was all about Doctor Who. I'm sorry.
You'd hope that the people watching, like, they're more fans of us than they are Doctor Who, but if they're...
Yeah. I'm sorry. I can only apologise, but I hope everyone has a lovely day.
Never apologise, Lucas. Only ever double down. That's the British way.
Oh dear. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.